Hi guys, so following the dramatic news on Monday from the scientists that the UK could be facing up to 50,000 new cases per day by the middle of October, the Health Secretary Matt Hancock spoke in Parliament and he resorted to a carrot and stick approach in order to encourage people to self-isolate and follow the rules. Let's hear what he had to say.
Now, I know that self-isolation can be tough for many people, especially if you're not in a position to work from home. And I don't want anyone having to worry about their finances while they're doing the right thing. So we will introduce a new £500 isolation support payment for people on low incomes who can't work because they've tested positive or are asked to self-isolate by NHS Test and Trace. It will start next Monday. It will apply directly in England, and the UK government will be providing funding through the Barnett formula to the devolved administrations so that similar support can be offered to people in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
Okay, so this sounds quite reasonable. £500 to people to self-isolate. Because up until this stage, the only financial support people received for actually self-isolating was statutory sick pay, which is less than £100 a week, and that's completely insufficient to survive on. And people were, of course, ignoring it and going to work, and in many cases they were forced to go to work. So let's have a little bit of a look at what this actually this £500 is about. So it says here, anyone who starts to self-isolate from September 28th will be eligible to receive backdated payments once the scheme is set up by the local authority. So the local authorities will have to organize this scheme. You will be eligible for the scheme if you live in England and meet all of the following criteria. So you have been asked to self-isolate by NHS Test and Trace. You are employed or self-employed. You cannot work from home and will lose income as a result. You are claiming at least one of the following benefits, which are universal credit, working tax credits, income-related employment and support allowance, income-based job seekers allowance, income support, pension credit, or housing benefit. Now, so this sounds quite reasonable, but my problem is with the very first one, where it says you have been asked to self-isolate by NHS Test and Trace. Now, the problem here is that there is insufficient capacity for testing. So people, imagine a scenario where somebody has symptoms. They call up NHS Test and Trace, they ask for a test, or they don't call up, they go to a test center and ask for a test. And they're told, I'm sorry, there are no tests available. What does that person do then? Do they meet the criteria, even though there are no tests available, for this self-isolation fund payment of £500? I imagine not, because they don't have a positive test. Or I don't think NHS Test and Trace can tell people, look, we don't have any tests available, you can still self-isolate for £500. Now, I may be wrong here, but I imagine the NHS Test and Trace don't have the authority to allow people just to self-isolate and claim the money. I think a positive test is required, or at least some type of understanding of the person's symptoms is required. But we will have to see which is actually true. Let's hear what else he had to say.
Mr. Speaker, just as we're strengthening our support for those who self-isolate, we propose to strengthen the sanctions for those who do not. The vast majority of people who are asked to self-isolate do, but these rules are so important that we must ensure that nobody breaks them. We're therefore proposing a new legal duty to self-isolate, again for people who test positive or who are asked to do so by NHS Test and Trace. This is backed by fines of up to £10,000 for repeat offences and serious breaches.
Okay, so my only problem with this is, why are you introducing it now in the second wave? Why wasn't this introduced in the first wave? I think it could have actually helped reduce the spread in the first wave, and perhaps we wouldn't be seeing a second wave now, or at least we'd be seeing a less dramatic second wave. There was this approach back during the first wave to plead with people to follow the rules, ask people to follow the rules, beg people to follow the rules, and the fines were completely insufficient in order to encourage people to follow the rules. So I think it's a bit pointless introducing it now. People have lost trust in the government. There was some trust in Boris Johnson and the government at the beginning of the pandemic, but now it's completely gone. And imposing fines, people are frankly insulted to be fined.
We'll step up enforcement too. NHS Test and Trace will make regular checks on those who are self-isolating, and we'll crack down on employers who try to prevent staff from following the rules.
Okay, and that's very important. That if staff want to follow the rules and their employers don't want them to follow the rules, for example, you say, look, I have symptoms, I can't come to work, and your boss says, I don't care, you must come to work. I think it's important that these companies, these owners, are punished. Now, how they will be punished remains to be seen.
Parts of Lancashire, Merseyside, in Warrington and Halton, we're putting in place new measures from tomorrow. As with our strategy overall, our goal is to protect education and employment as much as possible while bearing down on the virus.
But I've said this before, you can defend jobs or you can attack the virus. You can't do both. By attempting to do both, you're destroying, in a sense, your ability to defeat the virus, and you're damaging business in the long term.
Residents should not socialise with people outside their own households or support bubble. Hospitality will be restricted to table service only, and operating hours will be restricted, so venues must close between 10 and 5. From tomorrow, in Wolverhampton, Oadby and Wigston, and the whole of Bradford, Kirklees and Calderdale, people should not socialise outside their household or support bubble. And I've heard the concerns about the impact of local action on childcare arrangements. For many, informal childcare arrangements are a lifeline without which they couldn't do their jobs. So today I'm able to announce a new exemption for looking after children under the age of 14 or vulnerable adults where that is necessary for caring purposes. This covers both formal and informal arrangements.
Okay, but this is an attempt to shift the blame, or shift the responsibility, I should say, onto grandparents. So this is about saying, okay, grandparents, we wanted to protect grandparents at one stage. Now, well, we don't have sufficient childcare facilities, free childcare in the country. We don't have it available. It would be too expensive. So we're going to free up grandparents to look after children. And to hell with the grandparents if they get sick. This seems to be the approach. This is, instead of investing in childcare, safe childcare, what the government are doing is they're outsourcing childcare to grandparents. Grandparents were at one stage protected. Now they're not going to be protected because they have a duty. They have to fill the space where childcare should be, public childcare, public free childcare. Grandparents have to pick up the slack. And we know how that's going to end.
It does not allow for playdates or parties, but it does mean that a consistent childcare relationship that is vital for somebody to get to work is allowed.
This is all about getting people back to work. This is not about dealing with the pandemic. It's about saving certain industries, certain companies, making sure that certain businesses make a profit. It has never really been about defeating the pandemic or controlling it. Otherwise, the measures that I have talked about on this channel would have been imposed. I think we should have written off 2020, said, look, we impose our lockdown for the rest of the year, get this virus under control, and then we can consider restarting in a new way in 2021. But instead, this approach has been driven economically and not scientifically. But let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?